What is going on, GBA? I am the Confusion, back with the weekly recaps, week 2, but again, I am not alone. I am with Spastic.
What's up? Hello, one and all, GBA. What is up? Here we are, week 2 recap.
Yeah, and you know what? Week 2 is not going to be much different from week 1. Another batch of amazing battles. So you know what? Me and Spastic are here to go over them with you. So let's just jump right into this thing. We got the Philadelphia Scissors up against the Florida Gators up first. So we got Chimp bringing Thunderous, Silvally Fairy, Doug Trio, Fortress, Volcanion, and Azumarill. And the Gators are bringing Latios, Galvantula, Pyukumuku, Whimsicott, Heatran, and Mamoswine. So we have a crazy game here because one, we have I love the Silvally Fairy set, and I'm sure Spastic you'd agree with me because it brought Pursuit. And what's cool about Pursuit on a Pokemon like this is it really forces out Pokemon. So when you have a Pokemon that has Pursuit and can be any typing, you can force out pretty much any Pokemon you want to, and pursuing them is definitely something that's important in this game, as we'll see as we keep going along. So obviously Gator is able to get up those webs pretty quickly, but that does cost him his Galvantula because Doug Trio gets its first kill of many, being able to just trap that thing and just get rid of it. And you know, Gator thought he was being smart. Heatran brought the Shed Shell, but unfortunately, Heatran was brought down very low by Thunderous's Thunderbolt, and it was Pursuit trapped. So I just want to make that note. Chimp did amazing in that one turn, being able to predict not only the Shed Shell, but the fact that he was going to switch out and pursuing. So, you know, that was all just, I was very impressed with that. That was just great play right in the moment, and I really appreciated that. Towards the later game, you know, you have some more, you know, mixes up with the Latios, the Mamoswine obviously doing a lot of work against Fortress. Fortress is able to get rid of the webs once Galvantula is gone. So again, just some more prep on Chimp's part that I want to, you know, show, because it's quite impressive the fact that he was able to trap Galvantula, get rid of it, and then get rid of the webs later on. And then lastly, let's just note the fact that Azumarill was able to quickly get that Aqua Jet off on the Mamoswine, get rid of that thing. And then lastly, Doug Trio was able to kill the Pyukumuku after it got poisoned, after it got knockoffed. Chimp just put so much thought into that end game, and I thought it was beautiful. Just sweeping last minute with Volcanion and Sludge Bomb. I just thought that was very impressive. Obviously, Gator put up a great fight. He had a great prep. I just think in reality, Chimp really did not only out prep him but outplay him. It was really impressive.
Silvally. It's really interesting to see Silvally in all of its different forms thus far. And Silvally Fairy is, in my opinion, one of the stronger discs that you can put on it. Because Silvally gets such a good enough move pool with Pursuit, with Parting Shot to give momentum, you know, and messing up with the team. It also gets a good wide move pool of physical and special moves. Words are hard. But the fact that multi-attack can be anything, whatever plate it's holding, whatever disc it's holding, it's hard to predict, it's hard to prep for. But again, Chimp used it to great effect. Doug Trio proving itself to be a very dangerous trapper. Again, Gator really did put up a good fight, but in the end, it was a 2-0. Considering how well Chimp planned out, Gator kept it to a 2-0. Very impressive on his part. But the next match we're going to talk about the Tampa Bay Luxrays versus the Pittsburgh Pirates. Mono bringing Buzzwole, Greninja, Jirachi, Miltank, Zygarde 50, and Roserade. Old Man Tup bringing Hydreigon, Tapu Koko, Chandelure, Scizor, Cryogonal, and Nidoking. Now, however you pronounce it, Cryogonal, Cryogon.
Whatever it is, you're going to be wrong. I just hope you know that.
Exactly. There is no proper pronunciation. We are all incorrect. However, there is one correct assumption about this, and that is Buzzwole is a monster and a half. Surprisingly, it didn't do a whole lot of work this game. Well, a lot of kills. It put on offensive pressure, but it didn't get a whole lot of kills like people were expecting. Roserade pulling in a lot of kill work. But the big thing to note in this match, rocks. Stealth rocks on both sides of the field, turning this match into a battle of attrition. Nidoking, again, getting those rocks up early, and actually putting on some offensive pressure. And neither coach really bringing any sort of hazard removal aside from Cryogonal bringing Rapid Spin. But as we see, Old Man Tup did not spin away his rocks, and that probably hurt him a lot. Now granted, it did wear out his team a lot quicker. Mono's team was getting worn out, but Mono was playing around with an interesting Jirachi set, Miltank just sitting there and soaking up all sorts of hits from Nidoking, and then just really proving itself to be that defensive, irritating monster that it is. Now, Mono knew his win con in the late game. He knew that it was up to Roserade to clean up. Once Nidoking was gone, Cryogonal and Scissor were all gone, it was up to Roserade, the Scarf Roserade, to put in that work. The fact that Mono realized his win con at the right time and then worked his sacks and switches accordingly, sacrificing Greninja, well, that modest Choice Specs Hydro Pump, and still didn't get a kill, that was impressive. But the fact that he was still playing around Tup and playing around his own team to make sure that Roserade got in with those right kills, scarfing himself into Sludge Bomb, and just putting in that fine offensive work from the defensive and the offensive perspective.
Yeah, no, you're completely right. Well, the thing about Mono is he really knows how to look at a game a mile away. He saw that Roserade can put in the work at the end game, and he set up the game so he can do that. I feel like if I were to give criticism to Tup, it's that he needs to think a little bit more long game, what can happen in the end, because I feel he's thinking more what's going to happen next turn, not what's going to happen in the next 5 turns. And that's really important when you're facing, players like, Mono, who are just very impressive. They think very ahead. They're amazing battlers. Obviously, the Roserade sweep. I'm at least happy Nidoking put in a little bit more work than I did last week, which was just get up the rocks and die. So at least we have that. I know personally that Tup is a really good battler, so I want to see him chug back into this, but right now it's not really looking like that's going to happen. But I'm hoping, I'm praying, I know he can. So right after that, let's move into the next game, which is the San Francisco Arcaniners up against the Borussia Donphan. And just like last week, we have Gen 6 OU up against Gen 7. So yeah, that's
do this.
That's a nice trend. No, but this was a really, really good game. There's so many aspects. I just want to start with the obvious ones, which was the initial Dragon Tail bulky-ish Garchomp. I thought that, really threw, Lars off at first. That was, being able to, mess Pokemon around, kind of break the sturdy on the Donphan. I thought that was really impressive. Obviously, later on down the line, you have a very unfortunate, critical hit on the Scald, killing the Rotom Heat. You have some impressive plays, which is Suicune getting up to +1 and killing the Decidueye with Ice Beam. So, when you look at the game, you have some really, smart plays going on. Both players on both sides know what they're trying to do. I just think that the Arcaniners, definitely had that, game ahead just a little bit more than Lars did, unfortunately, especially when it comes down to sacking the Volcarona. I thought that wasn't really the smartest play when you have Registeel in the back. He still did win, so obviously it didn't cost him. He did make the right move. I just thought that when you've seen a Helego up against your Volcarona, why risk the fact that he's Scarf when Registeel is sitting back there, saying, "Come on, let me come out. Helego can't touch me." But whatever. That happened. Arcanine are still, Mew is a great set. There's a lot of, see, my mind is going everywhere. There's a lot of really cool things happening. In the end game, though, Mew was able to bulk a lot of hits, and then in the end, just sweep with Earthquake. Personally, when I was looking at the team builder, I was a little confused as to why Mew was only bringing Earthquake. I felt like it could have, brought some more coverage, a Z move, whatever. Earthquake was still obviously really good. It did so much in a Helego, Magearna, Lucario. It really made me realize as an analyst how weak Lars is to the Earthquake. He does have Decidueye and Rotom Heat, But once you can get rid of those, which he did, which, props to the Arcaniners, props to George, Earthquake really just did really, really well. So I personally think it was a really, really good game. Obviously, there was an unfortunate Iron Tail miss. There was the Scald crit. So hacks were involved. But in the end, I think George did deserve that 3-0. Lars has a great team. He's a great battler. I'm sure he's going to pull back into this. But you got to give credit where credit is due. And George did phenomenally.
No, he most certainly did. Although you did mention that Iron Tail missing. Even Lars admitted it may have been crucial, it may not have been. But again, Iron Tail being, a 75 accuracy move? It's one of those gambles you take, and the rolls were not in his favor at that time. An interesting Garchomp set. Yeah, we're used to seeing Tank Chomp. It's not something that we're completely unfamiliar with, but the fact of Tank Chomp running Dragon Tail to help with that phasing and to get extra damage off, it was an interesting twist on things. And then Suicune actually putting in some offensive presence instead of just being the typical Crocoon and sitting there and annoying everybody in the world. Not switching into Registeel was an interesting play, but it probably gave George some extra momentum, Lars a little bit of extra confidence before getting just knocked aside. It was unfortunate, but it was the game and it was fantastic. And another fantastic game where we see some great setup and some great shenanigans is the New Orleans Pelicans versus the San Diego Gym Chargers. John bringing Goodra, Jolteon, Tapu Bulu, Scolipede, Skarmory, and Milotic. Envy bringing Magnezone, Dragonite, Lando T, Muck, Alolan, Empoleon, and Alakazam. Alakazam not even making a presence this game, which is interesting because it's a fast offensive presence and people expect it to tear holes through teams. It didn't do anything. But, Magnezone putting in a lot of great offensive presence, offensive pressure. Milotic actually did some good defensive and offensive work, but again, unfortunately not enough to carry the team. John really played well with Jolteon, keeping momentum with those Volt switches, making sure he played around Landorus to keep momentum on his side and in his favor. But Alolan Muck proving just how dangerous it is in the metagame. Even though it didn't get any kills, it didn't die itself. The fact that it's so bulky and only has that one weakness to ground, plus being able to fire off stab knockoffs, really hurt John's team. Landorus Therian still proving that it will always be a major threat no matter what gen this is. Just being there in the roster forced John to rethink how Jolteon and Scolipede were played. But rocks everywhere, and only Empoleon being able to defog. It really made things interesting to see how the two coaches played around rocks being up and taken off at the same time. But again, Envy just kept up the pressure, kept John wearing down, and proving he is the Lord.
Yeah, oh my god, this was, again, an incredible match. I'm sure, you'll hear from John that he didn't play his best, but I think regarding, the actual Pokemon that were in the match and the matchup itself, I think he was doing okay. Obviously, he's going to do better, but Magnezone this game was just, the pudding to this team. It really did so well. I was personally surprised to see Jolteon not have the Volt Absorb, but hey, it is what it is. Didn't matter too much, but not having an electric resist or even an immunity, is the problem when it comes to most of the teams. This season, I feel like, is a huge problem. And bouncing off electric weaknesses, please, let's go to the first 6-0 sweep of Season 7. The Detroit Steel Wings up against the San Francisco Giants. So the Steel Wings brought Cobalion, and Giants, I'm joking. The Steel Wings brought Tornadus, Crocodile, Sylveon, Magneton, Slowking, and Cobalion, while the Giants brought Feeny, Salamence, Ferrothorn, Umbreon, Heliolisk, and Conkeldurr. Now this is an interesting game. As most of the times they'll say, wow, this is like a great game, great. But if I said that about every game, then it wouldn't have meaning. This, I have to say, was an interesting game because there were some plays that I'm just confused about. First of all, again, props to, Crimson, Chase, the Steel Wings. He's doing really well. First of all, we're going to get obviously into the conference breakdown, but he's tied at the highest differential. He's doing really, really well. I'm so impressed with him, and I can't wait to see what he's going to go into for the rest of the season. But going into the actual game itself, Magneton. The problem with Geo's team is it doesn't have a ground type. Not having a ground type or an electric immunity at all makes it really weak to Magneton or electric types in general. And this time bringing Specs Magneton blew Geo's team up into shreds. Magneton getting around 80% on Salamence just with a Volt Switch. Obviously with an analytic boost and Specs, that's a lot of damage. Tornadus just came in right after and killed it. Salamence, the Z captain of the team, did nothing. Not a zip, zero. That's crazy. That's something Geo I really hope is going to address. Hopefully he can pick up a ground type later on in the season, hopefully soon. But that's a huge problem. Obviously, there was a little bit of hacks. Heliolisk did miss the Focus Blast onto the Magneton. I didn't do the calc myself. I don't know if it would have killed, but being that it was Specs, I'm sure it would have. I'm not sure how much it changed the game, though, because the real game changer was the Cobalion. Before we get into that, obviously, I want to give props to the Slowking, being able to sit, into the Feeny. Scarfini was cool, but having Slowking right there was just a problem. Obviously, you have Umbreon to switch into the Slowking, but that just baits in the Cobalion. And once Cobalion is in, it just clicked a Rock Polish, 2 Swords Dances. Now, normally, that shouldn't happen. You shouldn't just let a Pokemon set up 3 times. But you just let the Ferrothorn sit inside of there and Gyro Ball until Cobalion set up to hell and back. I personally think he could have just switched into the Feeny, threatened it out with a Moonblast or a Hydro Pump, because at that point Stone Edge wouldn't have killed, and gotten from there. Or at least, once he saw the Rock Polish. Swords Dance, okay, fine, you can kill it with the Heliolisk when that come in. But as soon as he saw the Rock Polish, and now it's at +2/+2, then he should have sent in the Feeny. He should have known that he could have set up another Swords Dance. I thought there was a problem, but that is a lot of preps to the Steel Wings too. I don't want to just dump it and say, Geo misplayed, Chase didn't really do all too well. No, he did really well. I was super impressed. Sylveon, the whole team, the whole structure of the team just worked against Geo's team. The matchup wasn't so great for Geo, but hey, that's the game we play, so the matchup wasn't too well. I just think this was a crazy 6-0. Go watch the battle if you haven't already. It's a crazy game from both sides. But what do you think of our first 6-0?
I have to say that when you think sweepers, you think Pokemon who can come in and just sweep teams aside. Typically, Cobalion is not the first Pokemon that comes to mind. But here we see it pulling off a nice 4-kill streak after setting up a Rock Polish and 2 Swords Dances. Crimson pulling off a very unconventional sweep with a very unconventional sweeper. But hey, that's League format for you. Cobalion is just fast enough with its base speed that even with a Rock Polish setup, it could have outsped a Scarf Heliolisk. But he was spec'd, so it didn't really matter. And Cobalion is naturally bulky enough that even if Conkeldurr had been running Mach Punch, he wouldn't have had to worry too much about it. If Crimson had put in enough defensive investment, it wouldn't have really mattered. But Magneton, that Specs Analytic Magneton, putting in nice momentum and dealing off a ton of damage. Crimson did well with that Magneton. The mind games and the preparation were great, but you want to talk mind games. Let's talk about the Milwaukee Saws Bucks versus the Alolan Athletic. Oh boy. So, Callum bringing Rotom Wash, Drudy, Espeon, Excadrill, Shaman, and Tyranitar. Battler X bringing Zoroark, Mimikyu, Lycanroc, Kartana, Kommo-o, and Cresselia. Oh boy, let me just say roar. Roar, roar, roar. I gotta say, Callum really read the situation well. He was in Battler X's head the entire time, I swear. Because Roar Tyranitar was clutch. Predicting the Kommo-o Belly Drum and roaring at that exact moment ruined the entire Sawsbuck's plan. I mean, a belly drumming Koma'o with the berry to boost its speed at the end, that would have been absolutely terrifying. But an interesting Druidigon set with Roar and Rocks being able to get off a little bit more chip damage, and again, roaring on Mimikyu when it went behind a substitute, predicting that, yeah, it could probably set up a sword stance or two, not even letting that happen, just straight roaring it out before it can become a humongous threat to the team. There were a lot of roles that didn't exactly go in the Sawsbuck's favor. For example, Druidigon living on 1 HP. 1. And Espeon staying at 7 HP when it rightly should have died, but Callum putting in a little bit of bulk was just enough. And again, running Flamethrower on Druidigon as opposed to Fire Punch, it was an interesting twist. Given how lacking specially defensive Kartana is, Flamethrower did make a bit more sense, but Druidigon is also really lacking in the special offense department. But Tyranitar putting in a lot of great bulk work. Rotom Wash doing what Rotom Wash does best, just sit there, bulk, and Volt Switch out and just cause general problems all around. Will-O-Wisp, fantastic. Callum's prediction game was on point this time. And one more thing, Zoroark. Battler X putting Zoroark to great use. I have to give him major props for being that shenanigan-y with Zoroark. And yes, shenanigan-y is a word. Or at least it is now. Boom.
Well, yeah, no. I have to say from my end, I am impressed with Callum. With a team that is not rocking anything Gen 7, he's just rocking out with old Gen 6. I gotta say, it's really impressive to see how he's playing. He's definitely a battler. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't expect to do so well, at least in the beginning. He's doing really, really well. Something that we saw last season, we saw that with MV and Shrimp. So again, the newcomers are doing really well, but speaking of newcomers that are doing really well, we're going to jump into the last game, which is the Free State Torracats up against the St. Louis Rampardos. Duncan brought Landorus Eye, the Weavile, the Metagross, the Torkoal, the Venusaur, and the Alolan Marowak, while A-Drive brought Clefable, Victini, Terrakion, Electros, Toxapex, and Staraptor. Now, I have a couple problems with this game. Before we jump into the game itself, Dan has two issues that I want to address. One is his team looks really nice on paper, but when it comes into the battle, he just has a lot of problems. Like, it looks great, but it doesn't match Dan's playstyle. I've been watching Dan. You guys have all been watching Dan for a very long time, at least, most of you. This is not really a team I feel suits him. Obviously Victini is here, so it has to suit him a little. The rest of the team I feel is just not the way he plays. But jumping into the battle itself, my second issue with Dan is he expects things and puts everything he doesn't expect in the trash. He did not expect, or I'm sure he prepped a little, but didn't really prep too much for the Torkoal Venusaur. And man, did it put in a ton of work, because Torkoal was such a great switcher to the Clefable. Spin its rocks, set up the rocks. It's a great switch. Landorus Eye, just so much pressure on the team. He had almost no switch-ins once that Electros went down. I just think it was also a little bit of a bad matchup. Duncan I have to give props to him. He did really, really well with his team. Obviously, Dan does not have the best matchup against it. Weavile doing really well, Landorus doing really well, Torkoal, Venusaur, that combo, Alolan Marowak. The whole team just, oh my god, it has so much offensive pressure, it's not even funny. The only problem is Duncan really had to be on his game, or else one wrong move and a Pokemon's gonna die, because if you look at his team, it's pretty frail. Like, you don't see too much take Terrakion's hits, It's quite a frail team. Double Scarfers on Dan's side with Victini and Staraptor is cool, but without a Rapid Spinner or a Defogger, Staraptor and Victini were punished a lot by the rocks. You also have Duncan just setting up that Sun, hard switching into the Venusaur on the Clefable, setting up a Growth, and just getting rid of Toxapex. Like, that thing has done nothing these past 2 weeks, so I don't know if he wants to get rid of that, I don't know if he wants to keep that. It's not doing too hot for him. Electros getting killed by the Alolan Marowak. That wasn't too smart, because now Landorus has a lot of fun clicking Earth Power. I don't know. This was just a game I felt from turn 1 Duncan had in the palm of his hands. And for, a team he didn't really have ready at that moment, he played with it very well. So, again, really impressed with the way Duncan played. I again, didn't expect him as a newcomer to play this well, but he did really well. Obviously props to Dan. He's a great battler. There's no doubt in my mind he's going to come back. But this was definitely a game that deserves to go to the Torcats.
Torkoal Venusaur. I do want to expound upon that a little bit more. I know you went into great detail about it, but the fact that we see Torkoal with Drought is a nice Gen 7 addition. And the fact that weather could very well potentially be exploited a bit more this season. The fact that we have more weather setters than just your typical, you got Ninetales and the Politoed. You've got a few more weather setters. And Torkoal being a very interesting one, considering it's not even a tier 5 that people would consider like in previous seasons. Yet here it is with a slight buff, with access to Drought, and it actually puts in a lot of good work. Again, with the Rapid Spin and Stealth Rocking, Alolan Marowak is a dangerous thing. It's slow, but it's bulky, and it hits like a truck and a half. Now, I have to say, Toxapex is really good at being a wall and just being an irritating defensive. That's all I can really say about it. But again, Duncan played around it really well. And, Staraptor put in a couple of nice kills at the end. Well, a nice kill at the end to preserve differential, but it was still not enough to keep the game going, keep the game in his favor. And again, not having any sort of removal did hamper his two big offensive presence in Victini and Staraptor. Terrakion, I'm happy that he has it again. He knows how to use that. He's comfortable with it. But this matchup just not in Terrakion's favor. Matchups in general, especially in this last game, matchups were an interesting part of this last game of San Jose Sharpedos versus the Utah Jasmine.
Oh, Spastic.
In case Yo.
I think I just realized that I said that the Torcats game was the last game. Oops. I think I remember saying that. I'm like, and into our last game. Whatever, guys, forgive me. We got one more game.
But wait, there's more. There's only one more, guys. Don't worry about it. So the San Jose Sharpedos versus the Utah Jasmine. Tom bringing Thunderous Theory, Nidoqueen, Vaporeon, Porygon 2, Hitmonlee, and Gardevoir. Cooper bringing Zapdos, Reuniclus, Hippowdon, Scrafty, Cloyster, and Swellow. Let me go ahead and start off with Swellow. Boom Burst. Specs, Boom Burst, Swellow. Actually picking up a nice kill this season. The first kill I think Swellow's gotten in GBA. Because with a nice Gen 7 buff, Boom Burst is a lot more viable. It's fast, it can hit decently hard with a Specs, and it's fast enough that it doesn't need a Scarf to outspeed a lot of defensive threats, and even some offense. But Tom. That Vaporeon Porygon 2 defensive core putting in some nice work. Nidoqueen not doing a whole lot, but Porygon 2 just sitting in front of so much of Coop's team. Vaporeon getting off some nice Scalds, Wishes, keeping the rest of Tom's team alive. And something else I want to note, Trick Gardevoir. Cooper had a strong suspicion that Tom was bringing Trick Gardevoir, considering how he brought it in and what he brought it in on. The fact that he still let it trick a Choice Scarf onto Reuniclus, his slowest mod, was an interesting choice, but again, it was one of those, in the moment, hindsight is 2020, in the moment, you make some bad decisions, and that may not have been the worst decision, but it ended up hurting Cooper's team a lot. Reuniclus was one of his main, actually a big defensive mod on his team, and the fact that he was crippled with a Scarf so crucially in the game really did hurt his momentum. And Scrafty going down, Aaron! So sorry, but Scrafty did some nice work. Hippowdon did a good defensive job, but it went down really easily. Thunder's Therian proving itself to be a especially offensive monster. And Hitmonlee doing some really nice work. Actually, there's not much else I can say here. What do you say? What do you think?
I think Tom was on his game. I have never seen Tom predict this well before. I was just genuinely impressed with the way he played. Like, I watched Cooper's side first. I was like, okay, wow, he's doing really well, but let me go watch his side. When I watched his side, he knew what was happening. He knew exactly what was happening. Props to Tom. Obviously, Cooper is an amazing battler. I'm sure he'll jump back. He has a great team. Like you said, Special Swallow getting his first kill in the GBA. We have never seen a Special Swallow do that, but obviously with its buff, it is more plausible now. But yeah, I was genuinely impressed with that game. I cannot wait. I think he took my advice. I said last week he definitely needs to play a little bit more on the offensive, and he definitely did do that. I think if he keeps going this way, he's going to do really well. So, after all those games, we're going to jump into the conference breakdown and look at what all these matches kind of rest week 2 at. So, when you look at these divisions and conferences, you're going to see some interesting people at the bottom, because I want to notice that first. St. Louis Rampardos, Gigantes, Pelipers, and Piratas all at the bottom with negative differentials. You know, what's interesting is these are all not only battlers from, the past, but they are all experienced battlers who have been in the GBA for a very long time. So to see them kind of struggle these first 2 weeks, it obviously doesn't mean they can't, pull it back. But to see them struggle these first 2 weeks is interesting. You have 2 newcomers in the front with the Torcats and Athletic. And then you also have the Steel Wings and Lux Rays at the top too. The most interesting division is Ula Ula, because we have 2 tied, Torcats and the Scissors. I think just alphabetically, Free State Torcats came first. But you have to note that the Torcats and Scissors are tied at the top of their division. I think this is very interesting. Ula Ula looks to be the most competitive because all of the differentials are the closest. The Ponies following that up, Akala. And then you just see Melee with the Steel Wings at 5 differential, and the rest are either neutral or negative. So what do you think of how these look?
It's definitely shaping up. The fact that we see the veterans at the bottom and newcomers at the top. I mean, Mono coming in as a substitute for Gubbs last season, and still proving that he is a very good battler in his own right. Crimson coming back for Season 7 after retiring in Season 5. Coming back and taking his conference by storm. Tied for first as far as differential goes. Mono is still a little bit higher just because he hasn't lost yet, and Crimson's at 1-1. But still, Crimson coming back with a +5 differential, that really nice Cobalion sweep. But we're also seeing a lot of close differentials. Nobody's getting absolutely destroyed. I mean, Tup is at a -6 differential. But considering that's over 2 games, that's not terrible. I mean, Tup is still putting in some good work. He's putting up good fights. And I get the feeling that he is finding his momentum. And I strongly believe that he will come in and make maybe not a total championship comeback, but he will rise through the ranks and get significantly better throughout the season. Tends to be the storyline for him. The fact that the newcomers, again, putting in so much effort and proving that you should not sleep on the rookies, it's really, really heartening. Oh, and Tom actually sitting at a 0 differential. Go Tom. You're really stepping up your game. Battler X stepping up his game. This is just good to see.
Yeah.
I'm very happy to see all this.
Yeah, again, just like you, I am happy to see how this conference looks. Especially we're only into week 2. There's so much more to come. So, lastly, we're going to jump into we're jumping everywhere. We're going to jump into the league leaders now.
Boing, 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 boing.
Yeah, so sitting up top, we have, the sweep of the century, Cobalion, with a 6 kills so far, 1 death. That is a +5 differential from the Steel Wings. Following that up, we still have Halucha still sitting there with its 4 kills, so that's still impressive. And then Landorus also sitting up there with 4 kills, the same score as Halucha. Now looking at the last 4 to 10, Volcanion putting in work, Buzzwole still from last week putting in work, But that's not all. Roserade came up also from the Tampa Bay Luxrays team, also sweeping. So seeing 2 Pokemon from that side is impressive. Chimp also bringing his Dugtrio to the top 10. And then lastly, we have Incineroar, Excadrill, and Conkeldurr. I am loving the way these Pokemon look. I love seeing Dugtrio up here. I love seeing our starter up here in Incineroar. I love seeing an Ultra Beast up here. I love seeing Volcanion in here. I love seeing Cobalion in here. I love seeing Cobalion in here.
Oh, yeah.
It looks really good. But yeah, that's our weekly recap, isn't it?
Just about. I mean, the kill leaders, you see some typical mods. You see Landorus Incarnate. You expect to see it, even though not running Sheer Force, you still expect it because it's a good, strong mod. Conkeldurr, Excadrill, Volcanion, and Buzzwole. Well, Buzzwole is quickly proving to be one of the strongest offensive presences in Gen 7. But the fact that we're seeing Dugtrio, Incineroar, Roserade, and Cobalion sitting at the top. I mean, you just never know what to predict in League format. Anybody can rise to the top. Any mod can get the most kills. It's anyone's league at this point. We will see this change regularly. We will see these kill leaders change out, swap out for brand new ones. This is week 2. This is still going to be very interesting. Still shaping up to be a really nice season. Oh God, I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So, if you guys are looking forward to it just as much as we are, make sure to keep in touch with us. Go in the description. Make sure you check out our Twitter. Make sure you check out the GBA official Discord server so you can talk with everyone else about everything related to the GBA. And make sure you guys are back here next week on Wednesday to talk about the Week 3 matches. But that's it. We're out.
Aloha.